Hi everyone, it's Selena again. Welcome back to another Workshop Wednesday. Today's video features animal drawing. For this project, you will need a sheet of drawing paper, a pencil, and an eraser. Everyone has their own drawing styles and techniques, but if you're a beginner, I'd like to show you something called gesture drawing. Gesture drawing is a very loose and quick form of sketching in the attempt to capture your subject's basic form. You can use this to help decide on the size of your subject as well as where you want it to be on your paper. For this, I'm using some basic shapes such as circles and ovals. This can help you save a lot of time from making small common mistakes, like starting your drawing off with dark, heavy lines that you might not be able to erase later. Although there's nothing wrong with starting a drawing with dark lines, you can use this technique to get yourself comfortable with the idea of drawing something new. Now, I haven't just yet mentioned what animal I'm drawing, but can you guess by my gesture drawing which one I've chosen? That's right, I've chosen a cotton-tailed rabbit. Now, before I continue, I'd like to show you what shapes I found in my animal and where you can find them in yours. So the first shapes you might want to sketch are the head and the body when deciding on the size of your animal. Then the upper and lower body. Next, if your animal happens to have them, the muzzle, ears, feet, and tail. And then lastly, any parts missing such as the upper arms, legs, eyes, nose, and maybe chest. Now that I've got some shapes to go off of, I can now start the outline of my animal. Here, I'm using light sketch lines to determine what looks right and what I want to keep. If you notice that something happens to look a little off, this is a great time to go back to your first step and reposition any parts. This part may or may not take you several tries depending on if it's an animal you've drawn before. Just be sure to keep going back and resketching and erasing what you need to as you go. Here's a close-up of what my outline looks like. Now I'm going to take an eraser and start cleaning up any lines that I no longer need. This is why starting off with a light gesture drawing can help you out. If you erased any parts, just be sure to go back in and redraw them. Since my animal has fur, I'm going to create a fur-like texture for my final outline. My animal also has some wrinkles and folds in the skin, so I'm creating some light lines to help give myself some guidance as I continue my drawing. This is something you might catch me doing as I go. Most animal eyes tend to have a lemon-like shape rather than a full circle. Here I am making distinct the upper lid and the lower lid. Next, I'm going to draw a circle for the iris where the color might go, right inside the lemon shape. I'm also adding the pupil and a small white circle just off to the side to make it look like a nice little shine. Here's a close-up of the final outline for the face of my animal, and here's a close-up of the rest of the body. Before I add any strong details, I'm going to go ahead and fill in my animal with some sketch lines that can help make it look like the hair is going in a certain direction. If your animal happens to not have any fur, you can use shorter and softer sketch lines to help give it a nice texture. Here's what it looks like once the sketch lines are complete, which also helps bring the animal forward from the background. Now that I'm going to start adding more detail, I'm going to switch my pencil out for a sharper one. To make my drawing look even more realistic, I'm going to go back in with some stronger value lines on the edges as well as the creases. Before I continue with the rest of the body, I'm going to go ahead and just focus on the head for now as I try to figure out how I want my shadows to appear. Since I'm going for a three-dimensional look, I'm going to keep the edges of my animal appearing darker in value than the inside of the animal where I want the value to be lighter. At this point, there is the option of drawing individual hairs, but for me, I'm sticking to the same technique as I was in the beginning where I'm using small back and forth pencil strokes to fill in my animal. If you feel there are some areas that are getting a little too dark, feel free to take your eraser and lighten up those spots. As I continue with the body, I'm going to follow those same steps I did with the head where my edges appear darker and blend into the rest of the body lightly. To get a little bit more detail in the eyes, one of my favorite things to do is to create a deeper and darker upper lid that helps create almost a bit of a shadow. To really make this eye stand out, I'm going to give a darker outline for the iris and darken up the pupil as well. You can color the iris as light or as dark as you please. If you add a darker fill to the top part of the iris, this helps create a more three-dimensional look. If your animal happens to have any whiskers, I like to start by adding some dots around the area. Then I place my pencil down and give a quick flick off the paper to create a quick whisker. I like to make some dark and some light. You can also add some to the opposite side of the face and maybe the eye area if there are any. And here I am continuing with the shading of my animal, again keeping the edges darker and the inside of the body lighter. One of my favorite things to do to make an animal look even more realistic is to continue adding more contrast. For my animal, I found that I was doing this in parts where either two body parts were meeting or where there were deep folds in the skin. Continue filling in the shade for your animal by continuing those back and forth pencil strokes. Now that I've got a good amount of pencil on my paper, I'm going to cover that with a spare piece of paper to avoid smudging. Something to keep in mind is that our hands carry oils, which may make it a little more difficult to erase those smudge marks later. If you happen to make any of those smudge marks, just take an eraser and go ahead and clean up your drawing for a better finish. For the ear of my animal, I'm going with a dark to light blend to help create depth. I'm pretty close to the finish for my animal, but I'm going to go ahead and darken up those creases and edges just a little bit more. At this point in my drawing, I'm about an hour and a half to 2 hours into my drawing, which is totally optionable. The more detail you want to do, take your time and just continue to build and build your shadows. Since I'm about done, I'm just going to take it one step further and create a nice shadow on the ground for my animal. If you're going for a nice detailed drawing, this is a great option to try. So far I've created an oval-like shape for my shadow, and at the center I am creating a darker value and blending out to a lighter value. By adding darker lines just beneath the paws, this helps create a nice weight for your animal. Here I'm repeating the shadow one more time where it's darker in the center and continuing to gradually grow lighter. And just because I'm having fun, a few more details before I'm finished. And there you have it, a completed animal drawing. And that's all for today's video. Thanks so much for joining me. Be sure to share your artwork with us at the IMAS Museum using hashtag IMASArtists on Instagram and Facebook. To learn more and to support us, visit our website, theimasonline.org.